this is the best Spider-Man movie, or maybe this one, or this one, maybe not this one. Well, today I'm going to be ranking every single Spider-Man live action movie to figure out who really has the best film. If you guys want to see where I ranked your favorite movie, be sure to watch the end of the video because every ranking is honestly crazy. We're going to kick things off with the film that started it all, the original Spider-Man from 2002. It's almost impossible to overstate how important this movie is. Before Spider-Man, comic book films were much smaller and a way more riskier genre. This film was a massive box office phenomenon and helped launch the entire modern superhero era. But beyond its historical significance, it's genuinely just a great movie. Peter Parker, played by Tobey Maguire, is the beating heart of this entire film. This version of Peter Parker captures the awkward but also good-natured nerd that the comics had made for Peter Parker. At the start of the movie, it gives us everything. A boy who is being bullied, who has an enormously crush on the girl next door, and is always trying to do the right thing. Well, for the most part at least. His journey from ordinary teenager to hero is the definitive Spider-Man origin story on a film. And crucially, this film nails the most important part of the character, Uncle Ben and his death. This is the start of the very long life lesson that we all use to this day.
With great power comes great responsibility.
That moral foundation is the soul of Spider-Man, and no film has ever captured it more powerfully. When Peter had chosen to become a hero out of guilt and love rather than glory, everything about the character just clicks into place. You cannot also forget one of the most iconic first villains ever, Green Goblin. Torn between his fatherly Norman Osborn side and the crackling, unhinged Goblin persona. That eternal war between the man and his own madness gives the film a genuinely menacing threat. Oh, how can I almost forget another iconic scene with Mary Jane and Peter Parker having that upside down kiss in the alley. One of the most famous images in all of superhero cinema. This movie is just so iconic, it just keeps a safe space in your heart. Adding on to that, the web swinging, the wall crawling, the discovery of his powers, it all captures the pure joy and terror of a teenager suddenly gaining all of his abilities of a spider, and then progressively getting the confidence to just soar through the streets of New York. This was truly an amazing grand opening to the series Spider-Man. This is the film that proved Spider-Man could work on the big screen, and it did it by not only getting the character's heart exactly right, which will give this movie, without a doubt in my mind, S tier. The original Spider-Man was basically the original template of the Spider-Man movies, and its follow-up took everything that worked and pushed it even further on to 2004, welcoming us to Spider-Man 2. And for many fans, this one is right in the conversation for the best of the entire franchise. For years, this was considered not just the best Spider-Man film, but one of the best superhero films ever made. Spider-Man 2 takes everything that made the first film work and refines it into something close to perfect. The genius of this movie is focused on the cost of being a hero. His powers keep flicking out due to stress. He's losing the girl that he loves, and he can't tell anyone why his life is falling apart. The film brilliantly explores the burden of responsibility. At one point, Peter literally gives up being Spider-Man entirely. That emotional core, the tension between personal happiness and heroic duty, is the most human any Spider-Man film has ever seen. And then there's Dr. Octopus, one of the greatest superhero villains ever put on a film. He's tragic, sympathetic, and terrifying. A brilliant scientist corrupted by its own invention. The mechanical arms are brought to life with incredible practical and digital effects. And we can't even forget about the iconic train fight, which gives Spider-Man one of his best feats that is even argued of why Tobey is one of the strongest Spider-Man to this day. Eventually, this led to Peter being unmasked due to his fatigue and having everyone on the train carry him to safety. This film is also just made better in every technical way. The web swinging is more fluid, the action is bigger and more inventive, and the emotional payoffs land harder because we spent 2 films with these characters. Now, does this movie have some flaws? Yes, but not enough to point out and break it down entirely. At the end of the day, those flaws are just nitpicks at an amazing movie. And as said for amazing movie, this movie will comfortably land itself in A tier. 2 incredible films in a row set expectations insanely high, and that's exactly where the trilogy started to fall, on to 2007. After 2 beloved films, expectations for this one were enormous. And to its credit, Spider-Man 3 has some genuinely excellent moments. The Sandman is a visually stunning villain, and his origin sequence was fairly well done. The Sand slowly reforming into a human figure is one of the most beautiful special effect moments of its era. He brings real emotion to the role. This movie also gave us the birth of Venom, which was followed by Peter's descent into darkness, which we've seen clearly with another iconic scene from Spider-Man. Alongside that, we also get Harry Osborn's arc, in which all of these moments had huge potential. The problem is that the film tries to do far too much in this movie. Studio pressure famously forced Venom into the movie. Sandman, Venom, and the new Green Goblin. Everything is connected to everything, even reconnecting Uncle Ben's death to the new villain Sandman, which eventually leads into Peter Parker's backstory. I know that Sandman had a part in Peter's uncle's death, but oh my god, grinding his facing into a moving train is diabolical for Black Suit Peter. But overall, the pacing is bloated, the tone is wildly inconsistent, and the emotional beat that hit so hard in the last two films really feels forced here. Now don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible movie. There's still a lot of heart underneath it all, and the action can be spectacular. But at the end of the day, it was very messy, super overcomplicated, and low-key a disappointment after two near perfect films. Overall, this movie is gonna land itself in C tier. The original era of Spider-Man did end on a stumble, but the franchise hit a reset button. 5 years later, a brand new Spider-Man swung in 2012 and giving us our first The Amazing Spider-Man. And let me tell you, this movie was truly amazing. When this movie was announced, fans were skeptical, rebooting the franchise just 5 years after Spider-Man 3. But The Amazing Spider-Man delivered one of the most well-rounded and emotional versions of Spider-Man we have ever seen. This Peter Parker is a star here. Where the original was more of a shy, sweet nerd, they portrayed him as a skateboarding outsider, dealing with abandonment issues and grief. And crucially, when he puts on the mask, this film captures Spider-Man's quippy, wisecracking energy better than ever before.
Just let me go.
Is that a knife? Is that a real knife?
Yes, it's a real knife.
My weakness, it's small knives.
Just let me go.
Anything but knives!
Oh, it's so simple.
He moves and he jokes exactly like the character does in his comics. The personality behind the mask finally comes alive in this film. The film's greatest asset is the relationship between Peter and Gwen Stacy. Their chemistry is electric, natural, and deeply endearing, and it feels like young love, awkward and sweet. Gwen is not only a love interest, she's smart, capable, and honestly a true equal to Peter, not just a damsel in distress needing to be rescued. This grounded emotional center gives the film an enormous heart, and it makes every stake feel personal. The movie also embraces a more grounded emotional tone. Peter's grief over his parents and Uncle Ben, his search for identity, and his small steps into heroism. This web swinging also may not be as iconic, but is much more fluid and hyper realistic. Shot with a sleek first person energy, is thrilling and modern, giving you the sensation of actually soaring between skyscrapers. We cannot forget the super expressive suit with the self-built mechanical web shooters. Even the villain in this movie, Dr. Curtis Connors, who was also portrayed as the Lizard. The fights between them were just honestly amazing, particularly that school scene where Andrew crawled over Dr. Connors like an actual spider, wrapping him up and taking him down. It was honestly insanely cool. We also cannot forget Dr. Connors' entire motive was to turn the entire city into lizards. Was it a valid reason? Absolutely not, but it was honestly pretty cool. From tying its way from Oscorp all the way to Peter's parents. It's truly an amazing plotline. This is a Peter who's a genuine inventor, building his own gear from scratch. The strength of that lead performance, the unbeatable Peter and Gwen romance, and the film's genuine emotional heart elevate it into a top tier movie. It's a Spider-Man movie that truly gets the character, and it's aged remarkably well, which will land this movie in S tier. Next up is The Amazing Spider-Man 2, one of the most polarizing films on the entire list, because a lot of people did not like TASM 2, and to an extent I can understand why, but this was genuinely an amazing movie. But before I get into anything, let's watch this peak intro into TASM 2. Top Spider-Man intros of all time. Let me start off by telling you what's good about this movie, because there is genuinely a lot of it. This Spider-Man is fully awoken. Between the acrobatic movement, the way he cracks joke mid-fight, while caring about the people he saves, it's just arguably the most comic accurate Spider-Man ever put on screen. The web swinging in this film is spectacular. Some of the best in the entire franchise, with a real sense of weight, speed, and also joy. We cannot forget about the main villain of this season, Electro. Electro was entirely peak. Electro started off super low in his life. Before Electro, there was Max, a super overworked electrical engineer that worked at Oscorp, who was really neglected by everyone, even on his birthday, which led to the death of Max and the revive of Electro, in which that also led to our first most peak fight scene in Times Square, Spider-Man versus Electro. This is still one of the most iconic Spider-Man fights in New York to this day. But despite all of that, Electro lost, in which this loss put Electro in an even more deeper hate for Spider-Man that had grew exponentially. Let's not forget the emotional heart of this movie, movie. Now, yes, they aren't together in this movie, but they still deeply care for each other. Peter is torn between staying away from her like her father wished or being with her because that is the woman he loves. Their chemistry radiates the entire movie and it's just super electric. And their romance just feels genuine and funny, which lived throughout the entirety of the series. But with said emotion leads to the film's most powerful moment. One of the biggest tragedies in The Amazing Spider-Man. The scene where Peter fails to save her is devastating, but also beautifully shot. It's one of the most best executed moments in any Spider-Man film, hands down. Now, what people really want me to get into is the flaws, but honestly, they aren't that significant. A lot of people say this film is overstuffed with villains, and there was way too much setup. It juggles Electro, Green Goblin, and the Rhino, while also cramming in a setup for a villain team-up universe that really never happened, and which honestly, I can understand to an extent. Harry Osborn's turn into the Green Goblin happens far too quickly to land emotion. That I can agree on. It really didn't seem in place. We knew Harry was sick most of the movie after his father's death, but for him turning into the Green Goblin at the end of the movie with really no purpose behind it really tips his villain over the edge. Now granted, that did lead up to Gwen's death, which is a crucial part of this movie. Not only for Green Goblin, but also the Rhino. It was a great way to bring back Spider-Man after his disappearance from Gwen's death, yes, but it also felt unfinished, mainly due to the fact that we never got Andrew's third movie. This movie is beautiful. Focusing on Peter and Gwen's Spider-Man lover duo is some of the best material in the franchise, along with a lot of emotional build-up in this movie, and you cannot forget the elite fight scenes. Both of the Amazing Spider-Mans gave us arguably the most comic accurate Spider-Man portrayed in action. With a great Peter and Gwen romance and amazing fight scenes, the only thing bad about TASM 2 is the underdeveloped villains, in which those are very minute details for two amazing movies. The combination of the genuine highs and emotional chaos earns this movie in a solid A tier. All in all, this universe of Spider-Man had ended up collapsing, but then a new studio deal brought Spider-Man into the Marvel Cinematic Universe in 2017. Welcome to Tom Holland's Spider-Man with his first movie, Spider-Man Homecoming. This was a big moment for Spider-Man. After the studio deal, Spidey finally joins the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The hype was enormous. Peter Parker was finally in the same universe as the Avengers. This film follows a younger, more inexperienced version of Spider-Man, casted by Tom Holland. As usual, he's juggling high school life with the eagerness to prove himself as a hero. We did see early in this movie we had the introduction of the Vulture, who genuinely is one of the better MCU villains. A working class guy pushed into crime, in which we got the mid-movie twist that lands like a punch to the gut. When we see the car ride between Peter and Liz's father, they figure out who each other really are, which set a load of tension, not only in this moment, but for the rest of the movie. But here's where it all falls apart for a lot of longtime Spider-Man fans. This Spider-Man feels less like Spider-Man. The suit he's handed is packed with AI, instant kill modes, parachutes. It kind of does the heroing for him in a sense. A big part of what makes Spider-Man compelling is that he is super independent. With homemade web shooters and a cheap costume, stripping that away from this movie removes that underdog spirit. The film also completely sidesteps some of the character's most important elements. What I mean by that is, there's no Uncle Ben, which means there's no lead to "with great power comes great responsibility" classic line. And like in the first two films, both Spider-Man lost their Uncle Ben, and that built them as a character. This is really important. It sets a milestone defining who Peter is. His motivation feels more about impressing his mentor than any personal tragedy. With the heavy reliance on the mentor and a lot of borrowed tech, kind of dilutes what Spider-Man should really be. Peter spent a lot of this movie being reckless and incompetent in a way that undercuts the friendly neighborhood charm. It's a perfectly watchable film, but as a Spider-Man film, it's the weakest of the bunch, which is gonna land this movie in B tier. That debut of Spider-Man split fans right down the middle. But a few years later, a sequel to Spider-Man was brought out and made, bringing us to 2019, Spider-Man Far From Home. Spider-Man Far From Home is the second MCU solo film, and the movie was tasked with closing out an entire era of the franchise. This movie had a heavy job. Released right after the world-changing event, it had to deal with the fallout of a mentor's death and the emotional weight of an aftermath. The premises is fun though. Peter goes on a European school trip hoping for a break from being Spider-Man, only to get pulled into a global threat. The film's biggest strength is Mysterio. He's charismatic, layered, and when the twist reveals his true nature, the movie delivers one of the best sequences in any MCU film. Mysterio's illusion attack on Peter, a trippy, nightmarish assault that captures the character's comic book powers perfectly. But we also get a shift between romances in this movie with Peter and MJ. The European setting is a very nice change of scenery, which helps the film move at a very brisk and entertaining pace. But the same issue that dragged down Homecoming persists here. The central plot of this movie is literally leftover tech he inherited from Tony. And the emotional core is about whether Peter can live up to that legacy. And let's be real, no one's living up to Iron Man. He's one of a kind. Again, Spider-Man's own identity gets somewhat buried beneath the larger story here. He's still less of your friendly neighborhood hero and more of the next big thing. The film also leans heavily on convenience. The villain's entire scheme relies on a chain of things that's going perfectly, and the drone technology feels like a video game. Peter also makes some frustratingly naive decisions, most notably handing incredibly dangerous tech to a man he just met. This movie wasn't all terrible. Mysterio is a fantastic villain. It had a fun premises in a Europe setting, and we did get to see a lot of Peter Parker grow in this film. It's a fun, breezy watch with a standout villain, but it struggles to let Spider-Man be his own character. That combination of great highs and structural flaws put this movie in C tier. Two solid but flawed entries built towards something huge, and the payoff shattered everyone's expectation. On to 2021, the best of the best. Our final movie on this rating is Spider-Man No Way Home, the film that broke the box office records and united an entire generation of Spider-Man fans. This was an event unlike anything the franchise has seen. A spell that Peter had messed up ripped open the multiverse, bringing back villains and eventually the other two Spider-Men from the previous film in the series. On paper, it could have been a cheap nostalgia cash grab, but live, it's a heartfelt, emotionally satisfying love letter to 20 years of Spider-Man. The film's masterclass is that the fan service actually serves the story. Bringing back the Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Electro, and Dr. Connors isn't just a parade of cameos. These villains are given real arcs, and Peter's mission to cure them rather than kill them becomes the emotional and moral core we were missing in the earlier movies. The Green Goblin in particular is terrifying and magnetic, reminding everyone why he is the definitive Spider-Man villain, and his return raises the stakes to the absolute highest. And then there's the return of the two previous Spider-Men, the emotional peak of this entire era of the franchise. Seeing 3 generations of Spider-Man share the screen, support one another, and reflect on their own journeys is pure magic. One of them finally gets to save a falling loved one, echoing and healing a tragedy from his own film. And giving that version the closure the fans had ached for is truly heartwarming. But No Way Home also, at long last, gives Peter the arc he'd been missing out. This is the film where he finally suffers a real devastating loss and learns in a dying loved one's final words that with great power comes great responsibility. By the end, this Peter loses everyone who knows his identity, shreds his reliance on borrowed tech, sews his own homemade suit, and becomes the true, lonely, self-made, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that he always should have been. It's the accumulation the character had been building toward the entire time, delivering the emotional core that earlier films were missing. This movie was just truly perfect. Not everyone could do the multiverse correct, but this was just an amazing way of putting it all together. With bringing all the returning villains, both the new Spider-Mans, and rewriting Peter's story, you just can't go wrong with that. The sheer ambition, the emotional payoff, and the pure love for the character on display are undeniable. It's a huge celebration of everything Spider-Man means, and the perfect note to end this movie and this ranking, which No Way Home solidifies itself in S tier. If you guys did like this video, make sure to like this video and subscribe with post bell notifications on so you never miss a video. Take care of yourselves, take care of your family. I'm gonna catch you boys in the next one. Peace.
いい加減おとなしく切られやがれ